When you hear the name Frankenstein, you probably think of the monster with bolts in his neck, a hulking brute with green skin who mumbles in black and white castles. Yeah, that's not Frankenstein. That's Hollywood in 1931, when Universal Pictures turned Boris Karloff into a walking Halloween costume. The real Frankenstein? He's not even the creature. He's the man who brought it to life. But what if I told you he was real? Not in the way you think, but in the way that makes the story far more disturbing. The real story is darker, and it has more to do with cutting-edge science, corpses stolen from graves, and one woman's obsession with death than anything you've ever seen in a Halloween costume aisle. Because the idea behind Frankenstein isn't 200 years old. It's almost 3,000. Long before Mary Shelley, there were warnings of creators who defied the natural order and paid a terrible price. And today, it's more relevant than ever. Mary Shelley was asking the same question scientists are asking today, in AI labs, gene editing clinics, and hospitals using technology to reprogram life itself. Frankenstein isn't just a ghost story from 1818. It's what happens when we try to create life in a lab. Every great leap forward in science asks the same question Victor Frankenstein faced. What if we succeed? And what if the thing we create has plans of its own? We've all seen him, Frankenstein's monster, towering over trick-or-treaters, stitched together like a human quilt. The flat head, the bolts in the neck, the heavy boots. Boris Karloff's legendary 1931 performance in Universal's Frankenstein burned that image into pop culture so deep it replaced the book in our collective memory. But Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, that's a very different creature. Instead, he's unnaturally tall, skin the sickly yellow of old wax, black lips, watery, unblinking eyes, and quick, faster than any man. He speaks in full sentences. He feels heartbreak. He quotes Paradise Lost, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. And Frankenstein himself? Not the monster, the man. Victor Frankenstein, a young medical student, brilliant, obsessed, and way out of his depth. It was a warning, inspired by real science experiments that were shaking Europe. Mary Shelley leaves his creation shrouded in hints. Not a lightning-blasted castle, but a dim university workroom. No secret formula, just whispers of chemistry, anatomy, and the most controversial science of her day, galvanism. In the 1780s, Luigi Galvani jolts dead frog legs into twitching life. In 1800, Alessandro Volta invents the battery, giving scientists a steady electrical current for the first time. In 1803, Giovanni Aldini, Galvani's own nephew, takes it further. In London, before a crowd, he applies electricity to the body of an executed murderer. Witnesses swear they saw the jaw quiver, the eye flicker, the chest heave like it might take a breath. In 1818, the very year Frankenstein is published, Andrew Ure in Glasgow shocks another corpse until its back arches like a bow and its arm punches the air. This wasn't horror fiction. It was science, and Mary Shelley was watching. We'll come back to these real-life experiments in a moment because the way they seeped into her imagination is even darker than the book itself. 200 years ago, Mary Shelley warned us about playing God. Today, with AI, gene editing, self-driving tech, and more, are we headed toward progress or playing with fire? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Later, in her 1831 introduction, she admitted she'd wondered if a corpse could be reanimated. And once you ask that question, the rest of the story writes itself. The movies gave us the costume. Mary Shelley gave us the warning, born from experiments no one was supposed to witness. And the woman who wrote this wasn't just telling a scary story. She was living one. Mary Shelley's life was already a Gothic novel before she wrote a word. Over the years, 3 of her 4 children died before they could grow up. And in the middle of it all, she nearly died, herself losing a baby. Every shadow of grief she'd carried since birth. Mary Shelley was born Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin in 1797, the daughter of 2 revolutionaries who believed ideas could change the world. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died just 10 days after giving birth to her, due to complications. Mary's life began in grief, and it never let go. As a teenager, Mary fell in love with the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was already married. Their affair was scandalous enough to make newspapers. Mary, only 16, ran away with Percy Shelley, who was 21 and already married to Harriet Shelley. They confessed their love while standing at her mother's grave. They eloped, exiled themselves to Europe, and lived a life of passion, poverty, and tragedy. Her first child, a daughter named Clara, was born prematurely. She lived for only 8 days. Mary wrote in her journal, "Dreamt that my little baby came to life again, that it had only been cold, and that we rubbed it by the fire, and it lived. I awake and find no baby. I think about the little thing all day." Then came the summer of 1816, the year without a summer. A volcanic eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia dimmed the sun worldwide. Europe drowned in endless rain. Crops failed. The air was cold and strange. The Shelleys stayed at Villa Diodati with Percy, Lord Byron, and physician John Polidori. They found themselves trapped indoors in Switzerland. They passed the time reading ghost stories, talking about death, and watching lightning split the sky over Lake Geneva. Trapped indoors by endless storms, Byron suggested they each write a ghost story. Between the lightning, the candlelight, and the late-night talks about science and mortality, Mary had a waking dream of the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. She saw him breathe life into it and recoil in horror at the very thing he had made. This was no random nightmare. Every loss she had endured, every conversation about science and death, every shadow of grief she'd carried since birth, it all came together in that moment, and then she wrote him down. When Mary Shelley imagined a man stitching life together from the dead, she wasn't pulling that out of thin air. This was science, just not the safe kind. In the late 1700s, an Italian scientist named Luigi Galvani made frogs dance, not with music, with lightning. He discovered that a jolt of electricity could make a dead frog's legs twitch. It was called galvanism, and the public lost its mind over it. If electricity could move the dead, could it also wake them? Enter Galvani's nephew, Giovanni Aldini, a man who didn't believe in doing things halfway. In 1703, Aldini came to London with a corpse, a freshly executed man named George Forster. Before a packed crowd, Aldini pressed metal rods into the body and sent shockwaves through it. The jaw began to quiver. The eyes opened. One arm rose into the air, fingers curling like it wanted to grab something. When the legs kicked, some swore the man was moments from walking off the table. This was the vital spark theory, the idea that electricity was the key to life itself. And in the early 1800s, people were trying to find it. Scientists experimented on animal corpses, on the freshly dead, searching for the flicker that could resurrect the dead. At the time, scientists debated the vital spark, some unknown force that separated the living from the dead. Could electricity be that spark? And if so, could it bring the dead back to life? Mary Shelley absorbed these ideas and twisted them into a nightmare. In her novel, it's implied that Victor Frankenstein raids graveyards for body parts, assembles them, and uses an unspecified scientific process, hinted to involve electricity to reanimate the dead. She took the raw, unsettling science of her day and gave it a soul. A creature not just born of lightning, but of grief, guilt, and the terror of what happens when men play God. To see why that matters, you need to hear what really happens in the novel, not the Hollywood version. The story of Frankenstein is told through a sea captain's letters. Arctic explorer Robert Walton writes to his sister from the ice. He rescues a half-frozen man, Victor Frankenstein, who begins telling his story. Raised in Geneva with his adopted sister/fiancée, yeah, you heard that right, Elizabeth Lavenza, and friend Henry Clerval, Victor becomes obsessed with natural philosophy. At Ingolstadt, Professor Krempe mocks his old alchemy books. Professor Waldman encourages modern science.
Now, consider the implications of this discovery. It changes everything we thought we knew.
Victor fixates on uncovering the secret of life. After months of solitary labor, Victor animates a giant assembled being. Horrified by its appearance, yellowish skin, black lips, watery eyes, he abandons it and collapses into illness. News arrives. Victor's little brother William has been murdered near Geneva. A family servant, Justine Moritz, is wrongly executed for the crime. Victor suspects the creature, but stays silent. In the Alps, the creature confronts Victor and speaks, begging to be heard. He describes fleeing into forests, secretly watching the poor de Lacy family. From them, he learns language and morality, and he reads Plutarch's Lives, Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther, and Milton's Paradise Lost. When he reveals himself, the family rejects him in fear. He burns their cottage in despair. He meets William, realizing he's Victor's brother and strangled the life from him. He plants William's locket on Justine, the servant. The creature pleads with Frankenstein to make him a female companion. If Victor agrees, they will disappear forever.
Create a wife for me, and then we shall vanish together.
Victor agrees. Victor travels with Clerval through England and Scotland, settles on the remote Orkney Islands, and begins to create a female. Fearing they may reproduce or worsen mankind's suffering, he tears the new creature apart before finishing. The creature witnesses this and vows to Victor, "I shall be with you on your wedding night." Shortly after, Clerval's body is found. Victor is arrested in Ireland, falls ill, and is eventually cleared. Back in Geneva, he marries Elizabeth, and that night, the creature makes good on his promise and ends Elizabeth's life. Victor's father, Alphonse, dies from grief. Victor swears revenge and pursues the creature across Europe and into the Arctic, where Walton's crew finds him. After urging Walton to avoid his own ruinous ambition, Victor dies aboard the ship. The creature boards the ship, mourns Victor, condemns his own crimes, and vows to end his life on a funeral pyre in the northern ice. He disappears into the darkness, and that's how it ends, leaving the reader to wonder what's more monstrous, the creation or the creator. The creature takes lives, yes, but every drop of blood traces back to Victor's first choice: abandon the life he made. Mary Shelley flips the horror on its head. The monster starts innocent, desperate for love, for belonging. Victor starts human, but loses his humanity the moment he plays God and refuses to acknowledge what he's made. In the end, the real horror of Frankenstein isn't that a creature learned to take life, but that a man could create it, abandon it, and feel nothing as it suffered. It's a metaphor for neglect, for the bond between parent and child, and for what happens when that bond is severed. It's also a warning about ambition without empathy. His selfishness, pride, and lack of compassion are what truly doom everyone in the story. Mary didn't just draw from science. She reached into ancient myths stitched together from humanity's oldest warnings. The subtitle of Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. In Greek mythology, Prometheus is a titan, famous for his intelligence and for being a champion of humankind. He is best known for defying Zeus, the king of the gods, by stealing fire from Mount Olympus and giving it to humans. This act of defiance, known as the theft of fire, allowed humans to advance and build civilization. In some tellings, Prometheus, along with his brother Prometheus, was tasked with creating humanity. Zeus, angered by Prometheus's trickery during a sacrificial offering, withheld fire from humans. Prometheus, seeing the plight of humans, stole fire from the gods and gave it to them. Zeus, enraged by Prometheus's actions, punished him severely. He chained Prometheus to a rock and sent an eagle to eat his liver daily. Prometheus's liver would regenerate each night, ensuring his torment would be endless. Prometheus's story is often seen as a symbol of rebellion against authority. His defiance of Zeus represents a challenge to divine power and a championing of human progress. Stealing fire can be interpreted as a metaphor for the human desire for knowledge and advancement. While fire brought great benefits to humanity, it also led to further suffering through Pandora's box, showcasing the double-edged nature of gifts. Now, compare this to the story of Frankenstein. Prometheus gives mankind fire. Victor gives mankind the secret of life. Both acts break a cosmic or natural law. Both creators suffer personal torment as a result of their gift. Fire warmed and fed us, but from it came war, destruction, and the opening of Pandora's box, which gave humanity suffering. Victor Frankenstein follows in the Titan's footsteps. Where Prometheus gave fire, Victor gives life itself. Their creations become their tormentors, and their stories ask the same question: is the pursuit of forbidden knowledge worth the price? Frankenstein is often called the first science fiction novel because it centers on plausible science, experiments, and consequences, not magic. But it's more relevant now than ever. We're on the edge of creating life in new ways. 2 centuries later, we now have new tools, and they're even more terrifying. In 1996, a ewe named Dolly was created by somatic cell nuclear transfer, the first cloned mammal. The result proved that a specialized adult cell nucleus could reboot development when transferred into an enucleated egg. That single experiment redefined what making life could mean in a lab. Labs now culture 3D organoids, miniature stem cell-derived models of human organs, to study disease, test drugs, and explore development. They don't think or feel, but they model real organ function in ways animal models can't.
The filtration rate is stable.
Excellent. Let's monitor the metabolic output for the next cycle.
In 2012, researchers showed how CRISPR-Cas9 can be programmed to cut DNA at chosen sites, turning a bacterial immune trick into a general-purpose genome editor. 8 years later, Doudna and Charpentier received the Nobel Prize for that work. And in 2018, He Jiankui announced the first births of CRISPR-edited babies, igniting worldwide condemnation and a reckoning over germline editing ethics. Basically, this capability can insert, delete, or swap genes, changing the genetic code itself. The potential is staggering, curing genetic diseases before someone is even born, engineering crops and animals with new traits, possibly creating entirely new life forms. But CRISPR's power is exactly what makes it feel like the modern Frankenstein moment. It's the ability to alter life at its most fundamental level. And once something like this is released into the world, you can't simply take it back. Whenever capability jumps, ethics scrambles to keep up. So the question Shelley asked hasn't expired. The stakes just changed. The Frankenstein story continues because the pattern keeps repeating. Unlock a new power, then discover the costs aren't optional, only whether we planned for the consequences. Frankenstein isn't just old Gothic horror. It's the blueprint for every science fiction story you've ever loved.
We did it.
Terminator, Jurassic Park, The Matrix, any story where human ambition creates something powerful only to lose control. Mary Shelley basically invented the genre in 1818. Modern critics argue that before her, mad science wasn't a trope, but after her, it's everywhere. Swap Victor's corpse patching for CRISPR gene editing, AI, or cloning, and suddenly, Frankenstein stops being a monster story and becomes tonight's news.
Groundbreaking advances in AI and DNA genetics are reshaping our future. Scientists are now able to predict diseases with unprecedented accuracy.
Self-driving tech, synthetic embryos. We're still making creations we can't always control. That's why the novel's final horror isn't the lightning or the workshop. It's the same moral warning, one first told thousands of years ago and retold 200 years ago. When we play God, we don't get to choose the ending. Mary Shelley's question still hangs over us. Just because we can, should we? So, what do you think? Are we headed toward progress or playing with fire? And while you're here, which Frankenstein do you prefer? The Hollywood monster or Mary Shelley's original vision? Let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far, you're officially into strange and dark things. So hit subscribe to join the Mystic Seekers. Thanks for watching.